If you've been waiting to watch Stranger Things 5 until all of the episodes are released, like me, please enjoy this Season 5 spoiler-free recap of Stranger Things. Full series recap up in January. Chapter 1. The Vanishing of Will Byers. Our show opens up with complete and total chaos. An event has taken place at a lab run by the Department of Energy. Scientist guy gets eaten by this unknown monster. So sad that the world will be missing out on this stash. Directly after this opening, we are at a meeting of little dorks playing D&D. It's a formal introduction to our main characters: Mike Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, Lucas Sinclair, and Will Byers. On the way home from this 10-hour D&D marathon, Will crashes his bike because he sees something on the road. After he crashes, that thing starts chasing him, eventually capturing him. A lot of episode 1 is getting to know our main characters. Now, we've already introduced the core 4. They are the main kids in the show. So let's go over our next few people who are going to be like teens, adults. Joyce Byers, Will and Jonathan's mom. Joyce puts way too much responsibility on her older son, Jonathan. That's all we need to know about her for right now. Jonathan, literally working a job, making breakfast for him and his younger brother. Definitely parentified child. Nancy Wheeler, she has been making out with the high school athlete, jock, popular dude. Who makes out in a bathroom, by the way? Was I just a loser in school? It seems gross. Nancy's love interest is Steve Harrington. He's a little bit of an asshole towards the beginning of the season, but he will grow. Hopper. We love a police chief with a dad bod and a physical dependency. We first meet him when Joyce realizes the next morning that Will never came home and he is missing. Our police chief rolls into the station late as hell, which seems to be his norm, and he is greeted by Joyce losing her mind because her son, Will, is missing. Of course, Hopper kind of like blows it off and is like, if a kid's gone missing 99% of the time, they're with a parent or relative.
What about the other time?
Joyce.
The one.
That lab from the beginning of the show, there seems to be this infection that's like spreading through the lab that the scientists can't seem to explain. Why does it have to be slimy? The last introduction to be made is Elle. We don't know much about her except that she seems to be on the run in a literal hospital gown. The first that we truly see of her, she is stealing French fries from a burger joint owned by a man named Benny. He like sees that she is clearly going through some stuff. So he calls CPS like any normal person would do. 3 guesses what happens to our friend Benny.
It's different.
The next day at school, our D&D club learns that Will is missing. They are told by Hop in no uncertain terms, stay home, stay out of the investigation. As children so often do, they don't listen and start a search party of their own. They go out into the woods in the middle of the night looking for Will. Did they find him? No. Who do they find? Elle, otherwise known as 11. Hopper, after finding Will's bike like crashed into the side of the road, finally starts to think that foul play is involved. He finds like dings in the wall of the home, seeming like a door was thrown open. He also finds shotgun casings, and an official search for Will begins that night. During this search, we learn that Hopper, he had a daughter who passed away, who he lost, which is a driving factor for him in almost every decision that he makes, especially after this season. While Hopper and like a decent portion of the adults in the town are out searching for Will in the woods, Jonathan and Joyce get a phone call while they're at home, and Joyce thinks she hears Will on the other line of the phone. And that's all for episode 1. Episode 2 is The Weirdo on Maple Street. Our D&D boys who found 11, Elle, in the last episode, bring her to Mike's basement, which is a wild statement to say. And the boys can tell that she didn't have the upbringing that they did. She's a little different. Lucas literally thinks she's an escapee from the local mental hospital and wants to tell Mike's parents about it so they can call the cops and like get her figured out. However, the three of them were not supposed to be out that night in the woods. Since they don't want to get in trouble for sneaking out, they wait until the following morning to tell Mike's parents about Elle. So Elle has a little sleepover in Mike's basement in this little tent. Super cutesy. I so want to hang out there. In the morning though, when Mike is explaining to her that she needs to pretend like she hasn't met them and go ask his parents for help, she refuses, saying that Mike and other people will get hurt if they call the police, if they call the authorities. Which is absolutely true, because in the last episode, Benny got absolutely murked. Hawkins' lab is listening into people's phone calls. They hear a phone call that Joyce makes the following morning after she hears Will on the phone the night before. Mike cut school the next day because he just wants to like hang out with 11 and like show her all of these things that she's seemingly never seen before, like a TV and a lazy boy. Sheltered is not even enough of a descriptor for 11 and like everything that she's been through. The only interesting plot points that happen during this like Mike cutting school, hanging out with 11 scene is that 11 sees a picture of Will and she seems to recognize him. And like, obviously, they've never met before. And also, Will has to like shove 11 into a closet because like his mom comes home and he's like trying to hide her. And she has a complete and total PTSD episode. Literally like flashed back to something in her past. This something is being locked into a room by a man who she refers to as Papa. Joyce leaves her house very briefly. She goes to replace her phone. She leaves. And the Hawkins lab folks come in like hazmat suited up and start like, what's the radar that detects radiation? Geiger counters. They bring in like Geiger counters and are like testing out her whole house, and it's lighten up. Anyway, it's very clear that the Hawkins lab folks know whatever escaped into their lab is what took Will, and they're like trying to cover shit up. So we are officially one day post Will getting taken, and Hopper gets a call about Benny, the guy who was like popped because he tried to help 11. His death has been staged, which like there has to be blood splatter like all over where he was standing, but somehow they clean it up and make it look like a suicide. Whatever. But that's what happens. Hopper interviews somebody that was at Benny's restaurant the day that he died. This man tells Hop about a kid who was like stealing food out of the kitchen, which we know is 11. Hop assumes that it's Will and even kind of like talks the guy into saying like, yeah, if Will's head was shaved, I guess it could have been him. In his search for Will, he also finds this like little scrap of a hospital gown, which 11 was wearing when she escaped. He finds this little piece of cloth and a drain pipe. That drain pipe leads directly to Hawkins' lab. This will set him on a path looking for Will, but really the trail that he's following leads to 11. Dustin and Lucas head over to Mike's after school, basically to be like, why weren't you at school? Only to find out that he did not, in fact, tell his parents about 11. Mike tries to explain the danger involved in that and why they shouldn't, to which Lucas throws an absolute temper tantrum and tries to go and tell Will's mom. This forces 11 to use her powers. She got powers, by the way, to keep the door shut, keeping everybody locked in Mike's room. 11 eventually explains that she knows that Will is hiding in a place that she has dubbed the Upside Down, which we will hear about literally for the rest of the entire show. Not only does 11 explain that Will is in this place called the Upside Down, but she also tells them about the monster who's been chasing Will. And our D&D boys dub this monster the Demogorgon. Back over at the Byers' house, Joyce gets another phone call, and this time, instead of just like breathing, which is all she heard on the first phone call, she actually hears Will saying, mom. All the lights in the house start like flickering. Will's boombox starts like playing songs all on its own, like some creepy shit be going down. As this is all going on, a literal like monster tries to like shove itself through the wall of Will's room, causing Joyce to like try and GTFO out the house. But she realizes that's my kid in there, dealing with whatever the f is going on. So like a badass, she walks back into the house while all of this crazy shit's going on. We stan Joyce Byers in this house. The only other thing that happens this episode is Nancy goes to a party at Steve's house. They're like drinking and stuff like that. Now, Nancy brought her friend Barb there because she basically didn't want to go alone. However, Nancy is really fitting in here and Barb is really not. Nancy like shotguns a beer and then Barb's like, yeah, I can do it. And while trying to like cut open the bottom of the can, she slices her hand open while she's like dealing with the literal open wound on her hand. Everybody like jumps in the pool fully clothed. After everybody like gets out of the pool soaking wet, Nancy basically dismisses Barb so that she can go upstairs and have sex with Steve. The result of this is Barb getting snatched by the same monster, the Demogorgon, that took Will. Episode 3, Holly Jolly. We open up with Barb in the upside down, spitting up goo. How that goo got into her mouth? Unclear. What is clear is that Barb is getting absolutely wrecked while Nancy loses her virginity upstairs to Steve. Fun! The next day at school, obviously, Barb isn't there and Nancy is hella worried. She's asking around like other students in the school, asking if they have seen her. She also calls Barb's mom, and Barb lied the night before, saying that she was spending the night at Nancy's house. Nancy goes looking for Barb and finds her car parked in the exact same spot that they left it the night before, like a block away from Steve's house. She also sneaks back into Steve's backyard, just kind of like surveying the area, seeing if there's anything that she can find about where the Barb might have gone after she literally told her to GTFO. Is guilt playing a factor in this? While she's like searching through the woods like a little critter, she sees something back there. What she sees is the Demogorgon. So she splits. She runs home and tells her mom that she thinks something bad happened to Barbara. I didn't mention this, but the previous night while Nancy was at Steve's house like partying, Jonathan was in the woods looking for Will. Jonathan ends up in Steve's backyard basically, and he starts taking pictures of the group of like Barbara, Steve's friends, and Nancy. He kind of takes some creeper photos of Nancy, I'm not gonna lie to you. And he is developing those pictures in the school red room. Another person walks into that room. So this girl sees creepy ass pictures of like Steve and Nancy that Jonathan has taken, and she goes and tells Steve, resulting in Steve smashing Jonathan's camera and ripping up all of the pictures that he has, which do include some of Nancy like half clothed. As everybody's like walking away from Jonathan collecting all of his shit off of the ground, Nancy gets those pictures that Jonathan dropped, which will come back into play later. Over at the Byers house, Joyce's grip on reality is as loose as it's ever been. She is stringing up Christmas lights all over her house in an attempt to communicate with Will. She's like talking through Will through the lights, and poor Jonathan thinks she is losing her marbles. Look, it works. Joyce is able to communicate with Will through these Christmas lights. She confirms that Will is alive and that he's currently unsafe via these Christmas lights that she has strung up next to the letters of the alphabet so they can like Ouija board talk to each other. So Joyce asks Will like, bro, where the are you? And Will tells her, I'm here, I'm at home. And then all of a sudden, that Demogorgon like tries to crawl through the wall again. Cut to Joyce running out of her house. Hopper goes with Dumb and Dumber. He takes them to Hawkins' lab under the guise of looking for Will. They find the other side of that like gutter. There's nothing there. But he sees a camera in the corner. So he asks, "Can I see the footage?" People at Hawkins' lab are like, "Yeah, sure, here's the video." And they play him a fast-forwarded video of literally nothing happening. It's just this drain pipe. Nothing's going on. Pop notices, though, that there's no rain in the video that they're showing him, and it was raining the night that Will went missing. So Hopper knows that the folks over at Hawkins' lab are lying to his face. This causes him to go looking for more information on the Hawkins' lab, which he does using like microfiche at his local library. He finds all of these articles about MK Ultra and this woman named Terry Ives, who says that she was a part of this MK Ultra experimentation and that she thinks the government stole her baby, which will come back later in the season. While Hop is at the library looking up all of this MK Ultra shit, he gets a call because someone found a body in the quarry. Because this quarry is so close to Will's house, our D&D group can hear the sirens at the quarry and go to investigate, and they see the police pulling Will's body out of the water. Cut back to Joyce running out of her house. Because of that monster that she saw, she runs directly into Jonathan, who's coming home. As they are comforting each other, you can see the police lights in the background coming to their house to inform them that Will is dead. Episode 4, titled The Body. Hopper and the Brain Cell Patrol are at the Byers' house, trying to explain to Joyce that the body that they found is absolutely Will, even though he hasn't been, like, officially identified. But Joyce, literal minutes before, had been communicating to him through the lights. And she's trying to explain this to them, making her look like she has lost her absolute marbles. After the cops leave, Joyce sits in her living room with an axe. Healthy coping skills. Over at the morgue, we learn that the local coroner was not the one that did the autopsy on Will. It was someone from the state. Sus. Joyce also refuses to sign any of the documentation saying that she verifies that this is Will's body. She insists that it isn't him. As she runs out of the morgue, she and Jonathan have this all out on the street in front of the whole town, screaming at each other. Jonathan insisting that Will is gone, and Joyce convinced that he's still out there and needs help. By this next day, Barb is officially a missing person. Nancy has to not only tell the cops, but also her mom that she was at a party and that she did Steve. Which is highly irrelevant and fuck ass of the police officers for pressing upon. And Steve is a whole ass dillweed about the whole thing, only caring that Nancy doesn't tell the cops about the fact that they were drinking at the party. Anyway, Nancy goes home and goes to her room and starts crying about her shit-ass day. Totally fair. She takes a closer look at those ripped up pictures that Jonathan took, and she sees something standing behind Barb in one of the pictures. And it's creepy as... This prompts her to go to Jonathan, who is looking for coffins for his little brother. Anyway, he takes a break from this to talk to Nancy about monsters and shit. They decide to team up together to investigate further. Jonathan does some fancy Photoshop before Photoshop, and they are able to see more clearly that it is an actual monster standing behind Barbara as she sits beside the pool. Mike is throwing a literal temper tantrum because he thinks that Elle was lying about Will being alive, which she wasn't. She proves that he's still alive by using Will's walkie-talkie to tune into him. After hearing Will on the walkie-talkie, Mike reaches out to Dustin and Lucas and convinces them that Will's still alive and that they need to get Elle to a stronger radio so that she can pick up a better signal. So they disguise Elle using like a wig and a dress from Nancy's closet and sneak her into their AV club, which only them are members of, because they're nerds. While using the radio, Elle manages to catch this glimpse of a conversation between Will and his mother. At the same time, Joyce is in her house having this conversation with Will. She can literally like see him on the other side of her wall, and she asks him, "Where the are you?" And he tells her it's like home, but it's cold and it's dark. And unfortunately, he has to hightail it out of there because a monster is literally chasing his ass. And then Joyce axes her way into a wall trying to get to him. Of course, as she axes her way through the wall, all that she sees is the outside of her house. Over at the middle school, Elle is like tapped out and the radio itself suddenly like catches on fire. Fire alarms go off and they literally have to like wheel her out of there. Hopper has a conversation with the coroner and she kind of casually mentions that Will's body is being handled real weird. Somebody from the state was called in to do his autopsy. Is hella unusual. This causes Hop to go and pursue the individual, the cop that called in Will's body. After some physical persuasion, the dude tells Hopper that he was paid off to go to this location and call the body in. He refuses to share any more information because he's literally petrified. He actually tells Hopper, like, "You're gonna get the both of us killed." As he says this, some like undercover, like blackout windowed car zooms off. So Hop officially knows some like weird shit's going down. He goes back to the morgue, punches a guard, knocks him unconscious. Not how head injuries work. He goes in to see Will's body, notices that there are no incisions, no cuts, like no autopsy has been performed on this body. So he gets his little pocket knife out, cuts through the body, and sees that it is a fake. It is literally a like silicone-esque body filled with actual stuffing. This causes him to take his happy ass and break into Hawkins' lab. And that's the end of episode 3. So Hopper is Mission Impossibling his way into the Hawkins lab. Literally like punching out 2 people in order to get to this secured area where he finds like toys and a kid's drawing. Like obviously there were children there, but there aren't anymore. He finds those things right next to this area that has a rip, a hole, a gateway into another world that has been leeching, infecting this town. Hopper is really just beginning his investigation when somebody in a hazmat suit walks up to him and like injects him with what must be some sort of sedative, and he's out cold. Mike and gang are kind of piecing together some things that Elle mentioned in the last episode, mainly that Will is in this place that 11 dubs the Upside Down. They relate it to the D&D Veil of Shadows, which is an exact replica of the world that we live in, but basically like dark and creepy. The next day is Will's funeral. Hella dark. Joyce is absolutely disgusted. After the funeral, Jonathan steals a gun from his father's car, and he and Nancy go monster hunting. More on that later. At the wake, the D&D club asks their science teacher, Mr. Clark, how someone could possibly get to a different dimension. He goes on to explain that traveling between dimensions is impossible, using this like flea and acrobat analogy, as we humans, the acrobat, are unable to travel to an alternate dimension because of the laws of physics. Basically, you would have to have a wormhole to travel there, which is not something that Mr. Clark believes that humans are currently capable of. This wormhole, the D&D club will refer to as a gate between our world and the Upside Down. Dustin, after this conversation, realizes all of their compasses are not pointing to true north. Meaning, per Mr. Clark, this gateway, this wormhole that they're talking about might actually exist. That is what is causing their compasses to point in a different direction than true north because of the electromagnetic stuff. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm a YouTuber. Leave me alone. Anyway, what do these literal children do? Use their compasses to try and find the gateway. Child safety is just not a thing in this show. Anyway, they don't end up making it to this gate because 11 uses her supernatural powers to point their compass like slightly off so they don't actually head towards the gate. This results in an absolutely insane fight between Mike and Lucas. Lucas, who this whole time has kind of been pissed off because he can tell that Mike has a crush on 11 and he's getting all like butthurt about it. So he uses this as like kind of a precipice to start this huge brawl with Mike. Lucas accuses Elle of messing with the compasses, which he's totally right, she did. Mike is like defending Elle, saying she wouldn't do that, and he like shoves Lucas and they start to like, not like an actual fight because they're nerds, but it's serious enough that it concerns Elle, and she uses her powers to like push Lucas, I don't know, like 15, 20 feet away. Lucas, obviously upset, decides to bounce. Hopper, he wakes up in his trailer. The people who drugged him shoved him back in his home. So he like pops out of bed, out of couch, and immediately starts looking for bugs, hidden microphones in his home, and he finds one. He immediately goes over to Joyce's place to see if she has been bugged as well. Luckily, she hasn't, so he tells her that Will's body is a fake. While all of this is going on in the background, Jonathan and Nancy, much like the children, head into the woods looking for Barbara with one gun and a baseball bat. How these children didn't die? Amazing. Shocking. They unfortunately stumble upon the Demogorgon because it snatches a deer, and Nancy actually ends up in the Upside Down searching out this monster. And that's the end of episode 5. Jonathan and Nancy are screaming for each other, but she's in the Upside Down. Somehow she manages to follow Jonathan's voice and makes it out of the Upside Down, which like 5 people now have been KO'd. After all of this literal drama, Nancy and Jonathan go back to her place. Steve just happens to be being a creep, and he's trying to sneak into her window when he sees them there in her room comforting each other after the, again, literal trauma. I'm sure that decision won't have any consequences. Over at the Byers, Hop is filling in Joyce on everything that happened at the lab. He thinks those drawings that he found in the lab belong to Will, but those drawings were little stick figures, and Joyce shows him one of Will's drawings, and Will has moved past the stick figures. He is an artiste. So Joyce knows that there's no way Will was the one that was making those drawings. And Hop finally begins to put together that all of this time, he has not been following a trail that leads to Will, but to a different child entirely. 11. Because he realizes this, he recalls the articles that he was reading about that woman, Terry Ives, who says that Brenner stole her kid. So they go pay her a little visit. When they get there, Terry is completely unresponsive. Apparently she hasn't spoken in years. Terry's sister, whose name I've never bothered to remember, tells Joyce and Hopper Jane was never born. Terry miscarried in the 3rd trimester. Apparently, Terry had this theory that her daughter was special. She had these special abilities, and that's why she was taken, and that's why like all of these government people were lying about Terry miscarrying in the 3rd trimester. Poor Terry. Ain't nobody believe her did they took her baby. Speaking of 11, she has not shown back up since Mike and Lucas's fight. Mike's handling it super well. 11 goes and like steals some Eggos because she hasn't eaten in like 24 hours. Goes into the woods and eats them. While she's there eating them, she hears Dustin and Mike calling for her. Unfortunately, Mike and Dustin run across some of their bullies who try and get Mike to jump off of this ledge at a quarry, but they say they'll hurt Dustin if he doesn't do it. Elle swoops in and saves the day before Mike becomes a literal pancake and ends up breaking the bully's arm, which is like crazy.
She's our friend and she's crazy!
So this whole season, we've been getting these flashbacks to Eleven back when she was actually in Hawkins' lab before she ran away. In this episode, it comes out that Eleven is the reason that the monster is here. She let the monster in and she created the gateway. So the chick who killed Benny, she goes to Mr. Clark's house and makes up some fake program for gifted children. This causes Mr. Clark to give them the names of the kids in the D&D club, Dustin, Mike, Lucas. So the Hawkins lab folks start following the children around. So the D&D club, still can't remember if I mentioned that already. So Dustin and Mike are over here. Now they've met back up with Eleven. And then Lucas is over here on his own. He decided to go and follow the compass signal to where it was actually pointing since Eleven wasn't with them and couldn't up the compasses. It leads him directly to Hawkins' lab and he sees Brenner and his team like gearing up and they are heading out. Jonathan and Nancy they decide to go buy chains and bear traps and incendiary devices, try and go monster hunting. Unfortunately, they get a little bit sidetracked because Steve is being a asshole and has spray painted town movie theater and has written Nancy the Slut Wheeler in red spray paint all over the movie theater board. Jonathan and Steve get into a literal fist fight, not necessarily about the Nancy Wheeler slut thing, but because Steve starts popping off about Jonathan's dad and then Will, which, like, I don't blame him. I'm sorry, physical violence is not the answer, but Steve needed a beat down. And Jonathan handed it out to him. So Steve and his fuck-ass gang managed to evade the cops, who called the cops because of this fight in a back alley. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Jonathan gets arrested because he assaults a police officer. He's like trying to beat down on Steve and the officer's trying to pull him off and he like elbows him or something in the nose. Jonathan gets arrested. After they arrest him, they find all of these weapons in his trunk. So he's in big trouble because he's a creeper loner white boy with a bunch of weapons in the trunk of his car. Sus. Chapter 7. The bathtub. So Michael and Dustin, they like reunited in the last episode. They go back to Mike's house. Lucas, who has seen the Hawkins lab folks like gearing up and getting ready, he's contacting Dustin and Mike on the radio, telling them it's about to go down. Somebody who is watching Mike's house sees them walk in with 11 and within minutes, their house is completely surrounded by vans. Those Hawkins lab folks, they show up and they tell Mike's parents, Mike's in big trouble. He has been like harboring this criminal. They're calling Elle a criminal, the like 11-year-old. Ms. Wheeler is absolutely geeking and Dr. Brenner has to like talk her down and he's all like, I'm gonna help him, you liar. They ask where Mike might be, and seemingly she tells them. Joyce and Hop get back from their adventure to find Jonathan in custody. The four of them, Joyce, Hop, Jonathan, and Nancy, all have a discussion about monster hunting. It's super great. The adults are like, no more monster hunting. And the teens, being teens, don't listen. Four of them all try and go and find the kids, Mike and Dustin and Lucas and, you know, the little dweebies. They are just outside the Wheelers' house when they see all of the Hawkins lab vans just like camped out there. So they immediately go searching for Mike and gang elsewhere. To do that, they head over to the Byers to get Will's walkie-talkie so they can contact the rest of the D&D gang. The Hawkins lab folks really try their very best to get 11 back. There's literally like a chase scene with the kids on their little bikes as the van's coming after them. And 11 is a total badass and like flips a van over. Honestly, one of the most iconic shots of the show. They meet back up with Lucas and everybody like kisses and makes up. They all go to their hiding spot, which seems to be this junkyard. Why? I don't know. As they're all hiding there in the junkyard, these cars all pull up. The kids start hearing people get like beat the up because Mike's mom is a narc and Hawkins lab folks where they were gonna be. Suddenly, Hop is there to save the day. He has knocked out the Hawkins lab folks, and now they're all one giant happy family. Once the gang's all back together, they try and contact Will and Barb. Elle is not able to use the walkie-talkie to contact either of them, so they built her a sensory deprivation tank using a kiddie pool and duct-taped safety goggles. You know what? Inventive, efficient, resourceful. They decide to go to the middle school to do this sensory deprivation tank thing, I think because they need a salt, and there's a bunch of like road salt there at the school. I think that's why. In the deprivation tank, Elle searches for Barbara, and she's looking less than lively. However, she is able to find Will, and he is hiding in this like little makeshift tent, barely holding on. He not looking good, but at least he's breathing. Joyce and Hopper go running off to the labs because that's the only gate that they know of to access the Upside Down where Will is, so they are on Rescue Mission Central. The teens are given the job of looking after the children. They don't listen because they're teenagers. They go and get all of their weapons back from the police station, and they decide to set a trap for the Demogorgon. And that is the end of the penultimate episode. We are now on to the 8th and final chapter, The Upside Down. The episode opens up to Joyce and Hopper being in cuffs because they just like moseyed on up to the door of the Hawkins lab. Hawkins lab folks are trying to intimidate Joyce and Hopper, but they're both hard-headed and it doesn't work. Hopper manages to convince Brenner that he and Joyce will go looking for Will and like clean up their problem. So Brenner is like, yeah, whatever, go into the Upside Down. He thinks they're gonna die. He thinks he's just yeeting and deleting his problem. But Joyce and Hop get all like geared up in the hazmat suits, head on into the Upside Down. So Jonathan and Nancy, they're at the Byers' house and they are setting up their monster trap. As they're getting things in motion, they have laid the bait already for the monster. Steve like knocks on the door and he's like, Jonathan, have you seen nothing? Boys got it so bad. So yeah, Steve's there all of a sudden, but they've already like set the trap for the monster. So Nancy like holds Steve up at gunpoint and is like, get the f out. And Steve is like, what is going on? It's at that moment that the Demogorgon shows up and the three of them do their very best to tough him up, including Steve, who like gets in some really good hits. Like, go Steve. They get it into the bear trap, they set it on fire, but somehow it still manages to get away. I guess by like poofing itself back into the Upside Down. Because when the fire clears, mofo is gone. There's this really cool scene where Hopper and Joyce are in the Upside Down, but they're at the Byer house. Steve, Jonathan, and Nancy are all at the Byer house, and they can see the path that Hopper and Joyce are taking through the house because all the Christmas lights start lighting up. It's kind of cool. Joyce and Hopper don't find Will at the Byers' house in the Upside Down, but they follow this trail of blood left by the Demogorgon. So the teens actually did help do some damage. It was kind of cool. This trail of Demogorgon blood leads them to the public library, where they find hella dead bodies, including Barbara's. But Will's still alive. Unfortunately, he's got this like face hugger type thing like in his mouth and all down his like esophagus. They rip it out, which is just like gag inducing, and he's still alive. Real quick though, try and tell me that the Demogorgon and Alien aren't the same. Try and tell me that the Demogorgon isn't a chick. She is literally incubating human bodies to produce her children. She's a girl. Fight me about it in the comments if you want, but you're wrong. The unattended children at the school go looking for pudding. I don't know. And Mike, oh my heart. Mike's talking to Eleven about how she's going to live with him at his house with his parents and how he wants to go to the winter dance with her. They have their first kiss, and then the lab folks show up. Elle starts people up left and right using her powers, just literally like murdering people, this like 11-year-old in a middle school. What you gonna do? She ends up killing that ass lady who shot Benny. Kerr, we love Benny. Justice for Benny. Unfortunately, taking out all of the Hawkins lab folks knocks her on her ass, and Mike and gang get captured for all of 2 seconds before the Demogorgon shows up and they're able to like scurry away. That Demogorgon does fuck up Dr. Brenner though. 10 points for the Demogorgon, that guy. Mike and gang are in a classroom trying to fight off the Demogorgon using what they call a wrist rocket, which is literally just like, they like are throwing rocks. Interdimensional monster. And they go that until 11 wakes up, or I don't know, finds the energy to like get the up and handles the situation even though she's totally tapped. It is a highly intense, pretty freaking emotional conclusion as 11 uses what is left of her power to kill the Demogorgon once and for all. Mofo literally turns into ash, Voldemort style. But once that dust clears, the Demogorgon is gone, but so is 11. People start showing up at the school, fire department, people's parents. Everybody is safe and alive except for Barbara and Benny. R.I.P. There's some lovely reunions. Joyce and Jonathan reuniting with Will. Mike and the gang getting to go visit Will in the hospital. Things seem good. Everybody's back. We're getting back to life as normal. But there's a heaviness. There's a darkness hanging in the air. Nancy lost her best fucking friend. People died. 11 is missing. Jump to a month later. Things seem to be back to normal. Mike and gang are back playing D&D again. Jonathan and Steve are amicable. Steve and Nancy buy him a replacement camera for Christmas, which is very sweet and like a full circle. We love it. The town truly seems to be healing. Pop is leaving food out in the woods though, with Eggos. Hint, hint. The last scene of this season, we see Will in his house celebrating Christmas, having dinner. He excuses himself from the dinner table. In the bathroom, we watch as he coughs up something slimy and so obviously from the upside down. And for a second, there is a flash and he's back in the upside down, but just for a second. And then he's right back, giving us a hint for what is to come in season 2. Chapter 1. Mad Max. Season 2 opens up with a robbery of a bank, I think. The thieves have a person in the car who has powers similar to 11's. We will go into this storyline as little as possible, but Girly Pop can make people see whatever she wants, and that's how they end up getting away. We do see an 8 tattoo on her arm, just like our girl 11, so they are twinsies. But let's move on to the good shit. It's Halloween time, fall vibes. It's been about 11 months since the events of season 1. The gang is at the arcade, and somebody has dethroned Dustin's Dig Dug score. A travesty. The name left behind on the machine is Mad Max. While they're at the arcade, Will walks outside, and it is as if he has been transported back to the Upside Down, just like at the end of season 1. Joyce takes Will to the Hawkins lab, where seemingly he's been undergoing some tests since the last season. He tells the doctors that last night he felt an evil presence that wanted to kill him, and the doctors are like, it's all in your head, as doctors do. They're claiming it's a trauma response, something called the anniversary effect, since the 1-year mark is so close. They literally tell her, ignore it. Pretend like it's not happening, and it'll go away, because that's definitely how problems work. Our D&D gang does meet Max at school the following day. Dustin and Lucas have a little crush, and they figure out pretty quick that she is Mad Max. Over at the station, Hop is being harassed by a man named Murray. He thinks a Russian girl with supernatural powers has invaded Hawkins. He's talking about Elle, and he's right. Not about the Russian thing, but he's getting pretty close. To get out of that meeting, Hop takes a call from a farmer who says that all of his crops have been sabotaged. It becomes clear pretty quick that there is something less than natural at play here. Steve and Nancy are talking about college because Steve graduates this year. Nancy wants to go off to college, but Steve, he wants to stay in Hawkins, get a job at his dad's shop, and live out the rest of their lives there in town, which is kind of like Nancy's worst fucking fear. Steve and Nancy have dinner with Barb's parents, and they tell her they're going to sell the house to pay Murray to investigate Barbara's disappearance. Because apparently he's a private investigator. Nancy is having some major emotional distress over this because they're just trying to figure out what happened to their daughter, and Nancy knows, but she can't tell them. Mike is struggling. He's been acting out because he misses 11. He's been radioing her every night for pretty much a year with no responses. If you remember, at the end of season 1, it was very much up in the air if 11 was even still alive. However, at the end of the episode, we see Hopper going to a cabin out in the woods. And who is in that cabin but our girl 11, whose hair is hella curly? What a choice. But she's back. That was it for episode 1. Now let's move on to episode 2. Trick or Treat Freak. It opens up with a rundown of where Elle was after the showdown at the end of last season. She was zapped to the Upside Down after she killed the Demogorgon, but was able to very quickly escape, running into the woods so as not to get snatched by the Hawkins lab folks. She survives alone, out in the woods, eating squirrels and shit all winter long until she finally decides to reveal herself to Hopper. Okay, back to present day, and it's Halloween. The D&D gang are all dressed up as the Ghostbusters. Super cute. Unfortunately, they are the only ones in the school dressed up, so they look like little dweebs. We are formally introduced to Billy this episode, Max's stepbrother, when he tries to run over Mike and gang with his car. Billy is a hot asshole. That's pretty much him summed up this season. Will's getting bullied, people calling him Zombie Boy. Those jerks mess with him while he's trick-or-treating, which, pushes him into another one of those, blips between reality and the Upside Down. He's getting stuck there for longer and longer periods of time, and he keeps seeing this huge monster that's slowly getting closer to him. Mike takes him home, and they talk about whether these visions are real or not. Will really isn't sure because it feels real to him, but the doctors are all telling him that it's just in his head. Over at the cabin with Hop and Elle, she wants to go trick-or-treating. Obviously, she can't do that while Hop is keeping her existence a secret. He promises to come home early that night so they can watch movies and eat candy and junk food. Unfortunately, he gets caught up because now it's not just one farmer complaining about sabotage craps, it's a whole buttload. He loses track of time, doesn't make it back to the cabin when he said he would, and 11 is pissed. She completely ignores him and instead goes to check on Mike, who's not doing too well. He really fucking misses her. There's a Halloween party for all the teens. Nancy and Steve go together. She is struggling. She's feeling hella guilty about Barb's parents selling their place. She also feels slightly responsible for Barbara dying since she basically kicked her to the curb so she and Steve could go do it. She deals with these feelings by getting drunk and picking a fight with Steve, resulting in Jonathan having to take her home. He's such a sweet dude. He might be a little bit of a dork, kind of a weirdo, but he took Nancy home, took off her heels, and then tucked her into bed. And that's the end of episode 2, chapter 3, The Pollywog. At the end of the last episode, we saw Dustin finding something in his trash can. What he found was this thing. Ew. He identifies it as a pollywog, but a never before discovered species. It's slimy and weird, and it doesn't like the heat. He names it D'Artagnan and brings it to school to show Mike and gang. The little fucker is growing fast. When he found it the previous night, it didn't have any legs, and now it has 4. That's too fast. When Will sees this little thing, he has a flashback to the end of last season where he was coughing up that nasty little thing in the sink. Gross. Joyce is dating a little cutie named Samwise. Excuse me, Bob. He has been in all of the episodes before this. It was just a little bit hard to work him in. He is involved with the family, though. He was there on Halloween. He let Will borrow this fucking giant camera. And he is serious about Joyce. He is talking about, moving to Maine with her so she can get away from all the bullshit that happened in Hawkins the past year. Bob works at Radio Shack, and he fucking loves Joyce. and we love Bob. He's trying to bond with Will and Jonathan, mainly Will. He drives Will to school one day and talks about these nightmares, because that's basically what we're calling these like flashbacks, these blips that Will is having to the upside down. They're calling them nightmares. Bob tells Will, be brave, stand up to your nightmares, like face your fear, and then it will just go away. Excellent advice for nightmares. Unfortunately, Will isn't fighting just nightmares. Bob tells Joyce about those older kids pushing Will down while he was trick-or-treating because it was recorded on that giant-ass camera, and she's watching it back, I think, to try and find those kids. But what she ends up seeing is a flash of this huge monster that Will has been seeing. And it's been recorded on the camera, meaning that what he's seeing isn't in his head, it's actually happening. Fuck you, doctors. Not only is it actually happening, but there is something big trying to shove its way into the real world. Will has another one of those flashes to the upside down, and this time it's so long that he's actually being chased by whatever it is that he's seeing. Taking Bob's advice, he stops running and stands up to the monster, but it does not work. Instead, it gives the monster the opportunity to completely surround Will, keeping him trapped in the upside down while it completely covers his entire body. Eleven is still hella mad at Hopper, so she sneaks out of the cabin to do pretty much nothing. She walks around town, and a mom and daughter end up seeing her. Hopper goes to the Hawkins lab to tell them about all of the crops dying. It appears to be radiating out from the lab itself. The new Dr. Brenner tries to just brush off this information. Pop isn't having it though, and he's like, get your shit together. Steve is being a little shit about Jonathan taking Nancy home. That he's being completely out of line about. However, he does ask Nancy, he's like, do you love me? To which she says nothing. Being upset about that, totally valid. At lunch, Nancy and Jonathan are talking. She is basically like, Hawkins lab sucks. I wish I could make them pay. She wants justice for the pain the Hawkins lab has caused multiple families. Nancy calls Barb's mom and tells her, come meet me at a park. I have some shit I need to tell you and I can't say it over the phone. This call is, of course, being monitored by Hawkins lab. Chapter 4, Will the Wise. This episode opens up to everybody surrounding Will as he's stuck in the upside down. We see the smoke monster wrapping around him, completely surrounding him and getting in his stuff. Before he's snapped back to the real world, Joyce immediately takes his little traumatized butt home, confronts him about the scary monster that he drew, and she's now seen from the camera. Will tells her that in the field, he felt the monster everywhere, and he still feels it now. Joyce keeps Will home from school the next day. He's feeling weird and has a really low temperature. She runs a hot bath for him and he drains that shit. He does not want to be warm.
He likes it cold.
Creepy. When Elle gets back home from her day out, Hop is waiting on the porch and he's pissed. They have a massive fight. They have this standoff about the TV and she pops off with a "You are like Papa" line, throws a book at him, shoves the couch against him. The stress of having to raise a child with supernatural powers. Glad it ain't me. The next day, Hop goes over to Joyce's place because she's called the station 8 times. He goes over to her place and he's talking monsters with Will. And he's asking the kid, do you hear the monster? How do you know what's going down? And Will says it's like the information just pops into his head. Almost like memories, but they're happening right now. Will is having an incredibly hard time verbalizing what it is that he is seeing. So Joyce, being the kick-ass mother that she is, tells him to draw what it is that he's seeing. And what does my guy draw? Like a map or a road or some shit. Joyce says that she thinks it kind of looks like roots, and that's when Hopper, a light bulb, is like, oh my god, this is all the creepy shit that he's been finding at the farms. In the last episode, Dustin and gang lost Dart, Dustin lied about finding him. So Lucas and everybody is like digging in the trash looking for Dart, even though Dustin found him and took him home yesterday. Mike thinks if they can find Dart, they can acquire some knowledge about Will and what's going on with him and the Upside Down, because the noise that Dart made sounds like what Will hears when he flashes to the Upside Down. The D&D group are kind of being douches to Max because they can't tell her about the Upside Down and what's really been going on, and she gets fucking fed up with it, and I don't blame her. She's having an argument with Lucas outside the school, and her stepbrother Billy sees this. He bans her from seeing him, saying that Lucas is the wrong kind of people, some racist ass fucking bullshit. Like, he's from California, they should know better. Nancy and Jonathan go to the park to meet Barb's mom. However, there are about 50 fucking undercover Hawkins lab people there. They try to peace out, but they are suddenly surrounded. They get taken to Hawkins' lab, and New Brenner basically says, the people who did all of that hurting of the town, of the people that you care about, they're all gone now. He basically says that if information about the lab got out, that enemies of the country would try and use this information and weaponize it. And you're telling me the US isn't? I'm gonna chill, but it's a lie. Nancy, though, kick-ass fucking Nancy, records that conversation with New Brenner. She had like a little recorder in her pocket the whole time. So seemingly this has been the plan from the start. Fucking love Nancy. They take this recorder and they hit the road. It's road trip time. Pack some snacks. You remember Dustin's little pollywog thing? Well, it broke out of the terrarium he was keeping it in, and it ate his cat. It's also not a pollywog anymore. It's like a little mini demogorgon that's on 4 legs instead of tail. Elle, since she's grounded, is responsible for cleaning up the mess from her fight with Hopper the previous night. While she's cleaning, though, she finds some hidden boxes labeled Hawkins' lab. In that box, she finds information about Terry Ives, her mother, who Hopper in a previous episode said that she was dead. She goes to her little, I don't know, like in-between astral projection place, and she finds her mom and sees that she's still alive. And she just breaks down and sobs. Why is this season so fucking sad? Were the Duffer Brothers like depressed when they wrote it? Anyway, that's the end of the episode. Chapter 5, Dig Dug. At the very end of the last episode, Hopper found himself in those tunnels that Will has been seeing and drawing that are underneath the town, the farms. He's a hothead, so he didn't tell Joyce or anyone where he was going. Mike is there with Joyce and Will trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with Will. Will tells Mike that he can feel the shadow monster like reaching into their world from the Upside Down, and the further that he gets into their world, the more Mike can feel him. Mike tells Will, this is a good thing. You're like a spy connected to the big bad. Is this Harry Potter? Will is like, well, following that logic, if I can connect to the monster and spy on him, can't the monster reverse that and spy on us? Well, hint, hint for the future. Okay, earlier. You know how Max got like fed up with Lucas? Well, Lucas bribes an arcade worker to lure Max to the back office. Hello, creepy. Lucas, before spilling the beans, warns her. This is some serious shit. Life or death. You could die. Do you accept the risks? She does. And Lucas tells her everything. At the end, she thinks he's fucking with her and asks for proof, which he cannot provide. Dustin's mom has been desperately searching for their dead cat that has been eaten. Dustin fakes a phone call to get her out of the house so he can lure Dart into their cellar. While burying his cat, he's trying to get a hold of anybody, Mike or Lucas, and he can't. He marches his happy little butt over to Mike's place. Mike's incompetent father answers the door and is no fucking help. He doesn't know where either of his children are. As Dustin is leaving, who shows up but Steve? Dustin and Steve go on a little adventure. They are the best duo. I love them so much. Elle runs away from home to go find her mom. She makes it there all on her own, well, with the help of a trucker. She, like, crawls into her mom's mind and sees all of these flashbacks of her mom giving birth, her mom, like, running in to try and find her, Dr. Brenner, like, zapping her brain half to death. Nancy and Jonathan stop at a motel on their little road trip, and they have this conversation where Nancy was basically like, why didn't anything happen to us after all of the shit that went down last year? I waited for you. And Jonathan was like, yeah, but only like a month, which pisses Nancy off so bad. End of that conversation. Anyway, the next day they make it to Marty's house, that private investigator, and Jonathan and Nancy give him the lowdown. They let him listen to that recording of New Brenner admitting to all the bullshit that went down. Murray isn't convinced that the general public will be able to digest all of the crazy shit, so he suggests that they water down the story, exposing Hawkins' lab for what they've done, getting justice for Barb, but in a believable, digestible way for the general public. He comes up with the idea to say that Hawkins' lab was leaching dangerous toxins, and that's why the Hawkins lab covered up her death with that runaway story.
They'll go down.
Fuck yeah! Speaking of the fuck-ass lab, they are doing tests on the soil samples that they got from all of the farms, and the dirt is being fucking weird. Hopper is getting himself into some trouble because he's trying to be a lone wolf, but you can't go all lone wolf when you're fighting a different fucking dimension. He ends up getting trapped underground, because that's what happens when you break off from the group in horror movies. That night, Will sees Hopper there stuck underground, and he knows he is in trouble.
I think he's going to die.
Uh-oh. But being the super spy that Will is, he shows Joyce and Mike exactly where Hopper is on his, like, giant creepy map thing. Of course, they don't understand this map thing, so they don't know where the fuck he is. Luckily for all of them, Bob comes over to save the day. Bob manages to figure out that these roads go around all of the bodies of water in the town, so he is able to pinpoint exactly where Hopper is, and as soon as he does, everybody, like, gets up and, like, heads for the door, and he's just like, really?
What are we really going?
The group shows up in the nick of time, of course. Just as they find Hopper and rescue him, the Hawkins lab people show up in their little hazmat suits because of all of the testing they did on the dust. They bring these blowtorches and start trying to, like, torch the place down. Once they do that, though, Will starts geeking. And that's pretty much the end of episode 5. We are going to do the summary of this next episode, highly out of chronological order, so let's jump back in with Dustin and Steve. They are taking the Negan back to Dustin's cellar to kill Dart. And by that I mean Steve goes down to kill him.
I'll stay up here in case he tries to escape.
Unfortunately for them, Dart has dug a tunnel out of Dustin's cellar, and they have no clue where he is. We experience some beautiful Dustin-Steve bonding. Steve's trying to give Dustin some girl advice about Max. I don't know that Steve is the best person to be giving Dustin advice, but he does tell Dustin his secret hair formula.
You tell anyone your ass is grass, you're dead, Henderson.
He's such a softie. During this bonding session, they have been sprinkling chunks of meat leading towards the junkyard where they will meet back up with Lucas. Lucas goes home after spilling the beans to Max, and he learns from his sister, Erica, whom we love, that Dustin was radioing him Code Red. He gets a hold of Dustin, who tells him what's up. Lucas immediately goes to Max's house for some fuck-ass reason instead of immediately going to meet up with Dustin. Okay, so it's not a totally fuck-ass reason. He now has that proof that Max was asking for in the form of Dart, and she decides to go with him to see this proof.
This better be good, stalker.
Lucas shows up to the junkyard with Max. Dustin is pissed because Lucas spilled the beans, which they all agreed not to do. He completely changes the subject and asks Dustin where the hell everybody is. Dustin, of course, doesn't know.
No one is around. Why do you think I'm Steve Harrington.
Poor Steve. Anyway, they're setting up a trap for Dart. Dusk has fallen, as has a fog, because of course. Everyone's just kind of like waiting it out, chatting. Lucas and Max have obviously bonded. Dustin is so butthurt about it. Dart shows up, but he's not taking the bait. So Steve jumps out with the bat. But Dart is way bigger. Him's big boy. Also, hims have friends. Just as things are looking really bad for them, suddenly all of the Demodogs, which Dustin has dubbed them that, all of the Demodogs suddenly GTFO. Why? Because some shit is going down on the other side of town. We're gonna rewind it. We're going back to the end of last episode where Will is like seizing out on the ground. After this, he is rushed to Hawkins' lab, screaming in pain, saying it's burning. Trauma, dude! The Hawkins lab folks now have removed their heads from their asses and are finally investigating what's going on with Will. Joyce is pissed off because these dumb fucks have ignored them both this whole time and now have no clue what's going on. Hopper, who was sprayed down Guardians of the Galaxy goo style, has been vomiting seemingly upside down goo. He is shown what has been going on in the lab. Of course, Hop is like, burn the bitch down. Unfortunately, they can't do that without killing Will, which I guess is something they don't want to do since they worked so hard to get his ass back last season. Hop radios Elle, who he thinks is at the cabin. She's not. But he reaches out trying to explain where he's been, and honestly, it's genuinely touching. Real quick interlude with the stuff going on at Hawkins. We're gonna check in with Nancy and Jonathan and Murray. They are celebrating their genius idea. Nancy and Jonathan drink a little bit too much, so they crash at his place. And guess what happens? They end up kissing later. And maybe a bit more.
That was the pullout.
Jonathan and Nancy finally make it back to his house. He sees the Polaroid rolls of film from when the Hawkins lab people were in there, like, taking snaps. So he knows somebody been at the house. All right, back to the lab. Joyce is giving Bob the lowdown of everything that happened the year prior. Bob is like, oh shit, this is crazy. And you can tell Joyce is like, shit. This is too much for him. He's finally gonna bail because she does really love him. Sweet, gentle Bob tells her, I get it. You told me this was not a normal family. Will wakes up, but he is not quite right. He doesn't remember Bob. He doesn't know who New Brenner is. The doctors are saying that Will has an infection of sorts, but like an interdimensional supernatural one. They do an experiment and confirm that any harm caused to the roots hurts Will as well. Despite all of this weird, creepy shit that's going on with Will, when he tells Mike that he knows how to take down the Mind Flayer, everybody just listens to him. He locates a portion of the tunnel map and says, the Mind Flayer is trying to keep me out of this location. It must be important. So everybody in the lab gears up for a big boss fight, and they head into the creepy tunnels exactly where Will told them to go. Hopper is watching all of this happen because apparently the Hawkins lab has figured out live streaming in the 80s? Hop is watching all of this go down, and he sees that Will has led them to the exact spot where he was when he went down at the exact same moment over in Will's room. And he starts apologizing.
He made me do it.
And Mike jumps up.
The spy.
Will's a fucking nerd.
The one with the
And a trap it is indeed. Absolutely everybody in there goes down. Demodogs everywhere. The Shadow Monster, or Mind Flayer, has figured out where Will is and is now sending the Demodogs to the lab. Chapter 7, The Lost Sister. This is literally the worst episode in the entire show, and we are going to breeze through this episode as fast as humanly possible. While Eleven was romping around in her mother's head, she saw an image of a little girl who was in that room with her, in the rainbow room. She is another child with special abilities that Dr. Brenner was being creepy about. Elle can't find her for some reason, but then suddenly she can for some reason. Whatever. She steals money from her aunt and bounces. She finds Girly Pop pretty quickly in the next state over. Her number is 8. It's tattooed on her, just like 11. 8 has been on a mission to kill anybody involved with Brenner and the lab. 8 helps 11 get a better control on her powers by confronting her pain. Basically, use your anger. Very healthy. 8 tries to get 11 to join her on this vendetta, but 11 won't just kill people. Kind of seems like she was going to, but then the dude has a daughter that they didn't know was there, so I guess she feels guilty and doesn't do it. The only impactful thing story-wise about this episode is that the dude that they wanted to kill says that Dr. Brenner is still alive. 11 decides that she doesn't want to join 8 and be a criminal. She also does see that both Mike and Hopper are like in a bad spot, so she goes back to Hawkins. Okay, back to the good stuff. Chapter 8. The Mind Flayer. We're hopping right back into the lab. The Demodogs are attacking. It's going down. Immediately, practically every scientist in the lab bites it. Mike says they need to knock out Will because he's a spy, and Will loses his shit. He's lying! He's lying! Joyce knocks his ass out as Mike is being actively traumatized by this whole situation. Our little group now needs to break out, but they are completely surrounded. The whole place is overrun. And then the power goes out. To get out of there, they have to turn the power back on. Hop tries to be the savior and says, I'll go reset the breakers. Unfortunately, you then need to reset the entire system, which involves a great deal of computer knowledge stuff. So we need a computer nerd to get it done. Thankfully, we got one of those. Over with Steve the babysitter, we see Dustin and Lucas are fighting about Dart and Max, but mostly Max. When suddenly, they hear some shit going down over at the Hawkins lab. And they look over and they see that the entire lab has lost power. Of course, they decide to go and investigate about the exact same time. Jonathan and Nancy have arrived at the Hawkins lab and they see Dustin, Lucas, and Mike and Steve all walk out of the woods together. Inside the lab, we meet back up with Bob, who has made his way over a sea of dead bodies to the breakers. The power's back on. Bob resets the security system, so all of the doors in the gate outside can now open. Bob goes back to meet up with everybody else, but he forgets his weapon. Bob is guided out of the lab by New Brenner, and he manages to dodge every Demodog on the way out of there. He gets to the lobby. He sees Joyce at the front door waiting for him when suddenly, out of literally nowhere, Bob is taken down by a Demodog. He is brutally ripped apart as Hopper has to physically restrain Joyce and drag her out of the lab. I'm not crying, you are! Nancy and Jonathan pull up to the doors of the lab just as Hop and Joyce are exiting. Everyone goes back to the Byers house to regroup and mourn.
Did you guys know that Bob was the original founder of Hawkins AV?
Stop it right now! There at the Byers house, Mike is the one to make the connection between what is happening with Will and the D&D character the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer has the ability to get into someone's head with the goal of taking over the world.
It believes it's the master race.
Like the Germans.
The Nazis?
Oh, sweet Steve. They know they need to kill the Mind Flayer, and they know that the only person in the world that knows how to do that is Will. They have to make sure that he doesn't know where he is before they wake him back up. So they clean out the shed, hang sheets and stuff. They tie his ass up and interrogate him. When Will wakes up, he is 100% exorcist mode. Why am I tied up? His family and friends, using the power of love, are able to reach him through the possession, and Will, even though he's currently being possessed, uses Morse code to communicate with everyone. And he tells them that they need to close the gate. Of course, right as they figure this out, somebody calls the Byers house. Will hears the ringing, and suddenly all of the Demodogs are on their way. The group gathers in the living room, weapons in hand, ready to fight. But then they start hearing some crazy shit outside. 11 has arrived to kick some ass. We see Mike in tears as he is finally reunited with 11 almost a year later. Chapter 9, The Gate. Mike and 11 are back together again. It's adorable and sweet until Mike literally screams at Hopper for keeping her a secret. As he should. There was way too much trauma response involved in that decision. Elle has her little reunions with all of her friends. With Elle back, they can now close the gate. 2 problems though. 1, the gate is completely surrounded by demodogs, and 2, if they do close the gate, they might kill Will. Joyce has the brilliant idea to make Will as inhospitable a host as possible. Mike, Lucas, Dustin, Max, and Steve have all been left at the Byers house. Everyone else has split up. We'll get to what they're doing in just 1 second. The kids at the Byers house concoct this plan to hurt the Mind Flayer in a different way so as to distract from what everybody else is doing. As Mommy Steve is telling them no way we're doing that, a car pulls up to the house. Mommy Steve meets him at the door and says, "Your sister isn't here. Unfortunately, these stupid fucking kids are all looking out the window." So Billy sees that Max is in fact there. So he tosses Steve on the ground and then physically assaults a child. Steve comes in to save the day. Unfortunately, Steve doesn't have the best track record with fights, and he gets his little booty kicked. Max has to inject Billy with that sedative they were using on Will to stop him from literally beating Steve to death. Max then threatens Billy and steals his car. Max is such a badass. These 4 children somehow manage to get Steve's fully grown-ass body into the car, and Max is driving them. Somehow they manage to not die and get to one of the infected farms. Steve, although pissed, leads them through the creepy tunnels until they reach the center, the heart, and they spread gasoline everywhere. Hopper and 11 left the Byers house together to head directly to the lab. They have a beautiful heart-to-heart where 11 says that she never should have left. And Hopper genuinely opens up to her about his daughter and his pain and how he has handled things with her wrong. All too soon, they pull up to the lab and 11 immediately starts having flashbacks. Someone get this child in therapy immediately. As Hop and 11 make their way through the lab, they come across New Brenner, whose name is Dr. Owens, by the way. Hop basically threatens Dr. Owens and is like, "You're gonna help me give her a good life after this, or else." Hop and Elle continue on, but where they need to go, the gate has been surrounded by demodogs, and they are stuck. Will, Joyce, Jonathan, and Nancy all head to Hop's cabin with the plan of torturing the Mind Flayer out of Will. You can call it an exorcism if you want, but I know what I saw. It's looking real bleak. Will literally has his hands around Joyce's throat when suddenly, on the other side of town, Steve lights that match in the tunnels. Not only does it weaken the Mind Flayer enough that it hops out of Will's body, but also it clears a path for 11 and Hopper in the lab. Will wakes up and everybody is super happy that he's not dead. More importantly, Hop and 11 finally make their way down to the gate, which is underground for some reason now. It doesn't matter. As 11 uses her powers to begin to close the gate, we can literally see the shadow of the Mind Flayer on the other side, but the Mind Flayer is actively trying to break through the gate and reach through. The Mind Flayer has recalled all of the demodogs to the lab, and Hop is like shooting them down with a machine gun as 11 literally levitates off the ground and continues to close the gate. But she manages to do it. The gate is closed. The demodogs start falling to the ground as their connection to the Upside Down has been severed, and apparently that causes their death. Elle did it! She closed the gate. And afterwards, Marty releases that story to the news, closing the Hawkins lab for good. Dr. Owens gives Hopper a birth certificate with Eleven's name, shown as Jane Hopper, so that she can live a normal life. The doctor does say they should wait about a year before integrating her back into society, but she is allowed to go to the school dance with Mike. It is so cute. All of the littles are like dancing with their partners. It appears that the world has healed until we get a wide shot panning out of the dance, out of the school, and there is this terrifying shot as things flip upside down and we can see the Mind Flayer hovering over the school. And that's it for season 2! Chapter 1. Susie. Do you copy? This season opens up in Russia. They have built this giant laser. The laser creates a hole in the wall, and slimy, seemingly upside down tentacles begin to creep out. But suddenly, it begins to fail. The hole closes, the laser freaks out, and like 5 people are immediately dead. One of the scientists working on the laser gets ganked by the Terminator. Really, he's the Terminator. Don't expect a resolution on any of this for like 5 or 6 episodes. Back to the people we actually care about. Mike and Eleven are in her room making out a lot. Hopper is pissed because he thinks they're spending too much time together, and yeah, they keep closing the door on him.
3-inch minimum! Leave the door open 3 inches!
Then they gaslight Hopper. Funny, but wrong. Afterwards, Mike heads to the new Starcourt Mall. Steve is working at an ice cream shop in said mall, and the kids use the delivery hallways to sneak into the movies. While Mike and gang are at the movies, the power suddenly shuts out, not just at the mall, but all over town. While the power is still down, we are transported across town to the steel mill, which I will be calling the factory from now on. In the basement of the factory, this swirling cloud of smoke forms as the theme music for the Upside Down plays. When this happens, Will gets the tingly winglies, and he immediately flashes back to the Mind Flayer from last season. Power comes back on, and he completely ignores it, 'cause that got him so far last season. The next day, Dustin comes back from a month away at summer camp, and the D&D club surprises him. Dustin forces them to hike up this big-ass hill to build a giant radio thing called Cerebro so he can talk to his girlfriend. She lives in Utah. Also, nobody believes that she's real because Dustin can't get a hold of her. But he does say, "Susie, do you copy?" about 80 times in this episode. While they are in this field, Will gets the tingly winglies again. At the same time, rats from all over town are converging on the factory. They immediately head for the basement. When they arrive, they start twitching and then explode. Gross. Nancy and Jonathan both got summer jobs over at the local paper. The guys at the paper are sexist pigs and treat Nancy like crap. Really, the only thing that happens with them this episode is Nancy, while at the paper, takes a call from a woman who says she has diseased rats in her house. That's it. Joyce is still working at the same store, but the rest of downtown Hawkins is completely shut down thanks to the new mall. Hop visits Joyce at the store to rage about Mike and Eleven. He does a lot of raging this season. There is a bit of regression there. Joyce helps him brainstorm and write down what he should say to Mike and Eleven, rather than just beating the tar out of Mike. That night, Mike is back over at the cabin, and Hop is supposed to have a calm conversation about boundaries. Instead, he lies and says that Mike's grandmother is sick, and he has to go home right now. Hop gets Mike in the car and proceeds to threaten him, telling him he's spending too much time with Eleven. Billy is working at a lifeguard at the community pool. He is thirsting after Mrs. Wheeler. But can you blame him? I mean, look at her. Billy is a little slut and invites Mrs. Wheeler to a motel just outside of town that night. And Mrs. Wheeler says yes. They both get ready for the night, but as Mrs. Wheeler is leaving, she sees her husband and daughter asleep on the couch, and she decides not to go. Billy, however, hops in the car and heads straight to the motel. On his way there, something smacks into his windshield just as he passes by the factory. As he's assessing the damage to his car, something from inside the factory wraps around his foot and drags him to the basement. And that's the end of episode 1. Chapter 2. the mall rats. A lot of rats in this season. The next day, 11 calls Mike because he hasn't showed up at her place yet. He lies to her, saying that he can't come over because his grandma is sick. 11 is visibly upset, and Hop couldn't be happier. Great parenting, bud. She is so upset that she goes over to Max's house and asks her for some advice. Max tells her, Mike is lying to you. If he won't tell you the truth, break up with him. Conflict resolution skills lacking, but she is like a 13-year-old, so. Max takes her to the mall to have a girls' day. Super cute. At the mall, they run into Mike, not with his sick grandmother, and Elle breaks up with him. Hop asks Joyce to dinner. She agrees. But as he's leaving, he trips over some magnets on the floor. When Joyce goes to put them back up, she can't because they've lost their magnetism. That tingles her spidey senses because the same thing happened yesterday at her house. Real quick, peep this picture of Bob that Will drew. Did you at least kiss the brick before you threw it at my face? Joyce, looking for info about magnets, goes to Mr. Clark's house. Style icon. They talk magnets, and he says the only way that this could be happening is if there was a huge solenoid disrupting the magnetic field. Of course, costing millions of dollars. Of course, costing tens of millions of dollars and requiring a buttload of energy. She's so distracted by all of this that she forgets about her date with Hop. Hopper spends his day breaking up a protest outside the mayor's office. People are protesting about the mall. Apparently, the mayor helped it get built, making him rich and basically half the town completely broke. At the end of the last episode, Dustin, while trying to contact Susie with his big boy antenna, picks up someone speaking Russian. It's our Russians. They're not in Russia anymore, and they brought their giant laser with them. Dustin is upset with his friends blowing him off the previous day, so he heads to the mall to see Steve, bringing a recording of his Russian transmission so they can translate it together. Steve works with Robin. We love Robin in this house. No hate will be tolerated. Anyway, Robin is really the one who ends up translating the message. As they're leaving that night, Steve realizes that Russian message was recorded in the mall. Nancy goes to the house of the woman who called in the previous episode. When Nancy and Jonathan get there, she has a psychotic rat trapped in a cage. Jonathan takes some pictures as proof. As they are leaving, we see the rat explode, just like the ones in the factory the previous day, except the goo from this rat starts moving. We're back with Billy. Somehow, he's escaped the basement, running to his car and driving to a payphone. As he dials 911, he is suddenly in the upside down, just like Will in the last season. He sees a crowd of people walking towards him, and out of the fog walks a mirror image of himself. Then, suddenly, he is at the pool working. While there, he attacks another lifeguard, tying her up and taking her to the goo monster in the basement of the factory. Chapter 3, The Case of the Missing Lifeguard. Gee, I wonder who that lifeguard's gonna be. After getting belligerently drunk at the restaurant where he and Joyce were supposed to have our date, comes home to find 11's door closed. He barges in like an absolutely crazy person to find her with Max. They're doing girly things. Reading magazines, dancing, using Elle's powers to spike on Mike and the guys, being gross. It's the most normal thing Elle has done probably ever. Unfortunately, they decide to spy on Billy. Elle drops in on him when he's in the factory, and she hears that lifeguard, whose name is Heather, crying. Jump to the next morning. Max and Elle leave the cabin early to go look for Billy. When they get to Max's house, no Billy, but there are empty bags of ice and bloody lifeguard gear. Max and Elle head to the pool looking for Heather, but she didn't show up to work today. Using Heather's picture, Elle goes spying on her. What she finds isn't good. They go to Heather's house, and who do they find there but Billy? Heather's there too. They're having dinner with her parents. At this point, it's become clear to the audience that what is inside Billy is the Mind Flayer. After Max and 11 leave, Billy and Heather beat the crap out of Heather's parents. Hop wakes up, hungover as hell, and Joy shows up to the cabin talking magnets. They have the stupidest fight because Hop has completely reverted from his growth last year and doesn't believe Joyce, even though she's been right about this shit for the past 2 years. They both go to Hawkins' lab to be sure they aren't back. They aren't, but Joyce experiences some super fun PTSD. It also comes out that Joyce is planning to sell her house. As they're heading out, they hear someone. It's the Terminator. He has broken into Hawkins' lab and proceeds to serve Hopper a beating. Is it karma for his regression? Yes. I believe it is. Will wakes up early and gets into his full D&D attire. All he has wanted this season is to play D&D, and he has created a campaign. And Mike and Lucas are total jerks about it. They act completely inconvenienced by Will wanting to play. They genuinely hurt his feelings, and he ends up running home. He throws a big old temper tantrum and wrecks Byers' castle. As he's finishing up with that, he gets the tingly winglies again, just as Mike and Lucas show back up. Nancy shows the sexist newspaper guys her pictures of the psychotic rat. They literally laugh her out of the room. Because the pictures weren't enough, Nancy wants to go back and get that infected rat as proof. Obviously, the rat isn't there, but they do find this old lady eating fertilizer. Over at the mall, Robin translates the rest of the Russian message and then cracks the code. They stay late and spy on secret shipments from the roof of the mall. Chapter 4, the sauna test. Heather's parents are tied up at the factory. They get possessed by the goo. How is it getting grosser? Fertilizer eating lady is carted off to the hospital. Nancy and Jonathan get fired from the paper and then have a fight. That night, Nancy goes to visit the old lady at the hospital. Her name's Mrs. Driscoll, by the way. And we're gonna pause on Nancy for just 1 second. Somehow, Joyce carted a knocked out Hopper all the way back to the cabin and took off his pants. Anyway, Joyce tells Hopper that the guy who kicked his booty the night before was driving a motorcycle. When Hopper went to the mayor's office the other day, there was a big dude with a motorcycle helmet. They head over there, and Hop uses some physical persuasion to get the mayor to tell them that he sold land in Hawkins to Starcourt. All of the littles, except for Dustin, meet up and connect Will's tingly winglies to the power outages that have been happening. They do some recon, and to confirm that Billy is currently possessed by the Mind Flayer, they come up with a test. They plan to lock him in the sauna because the Mind Flayer likes it cold. After the pool closes, they manage to lure him in there to find out he is, in fact, possessed by the Mind Flayer, who manages to escape the sauna and chokes out 11 before running away. Because of the hive mind nature of the upside-down monsters, when Billy is in the sauna, Mrs. Driscoll begins to geek out while Nancy is in the room with her. After Billy managed to run off, we see that he and Heather have built an army of people for the goo monster, which I will now be calling the Goo Flayer. I know it's called the Spider Monster, but I like Goo Flayer better. Robin gets a blueprint of them all and realizes that an air vent in the ice cream shop connects to the secret Russian base. Unfortunately, Dustin is not small enough to fit inside the vent, so they bribe Erica, Lucas's sister, with a lifetime supply of ice cream to get her to do it. She gets in, opens the door for them, and they find out what's in those boxes the Russians have been carting around. It's green goo. There's a lot of goo this season. Suddenly, they all get locked in. Turns out this secret Russian base is an elevator, and they start to drop. Chapter 5, The Flayed. The dream team in the elevator managed to not die after it crashes to the bottom, but they are hella stuck down there. The elevator buttons need a key card, and it's at the bottom of an insane drop, so there's no climbing out. By the morning, the Russians open the door to collect the boxes. Dream Team sneaks out as the door is closing, and it turns out this green goo is seemingly acidically corrosive. They manage to sneak into the control room, where Steve wins his first fight of the series. Go, Steve! In this control room, they find that huge laser the Russians have been using. This is what has been causing blackouts all over town. Joyce and Hop go to all the properties the mayor sold to Starcourt. At one of them, they find a secret room under the floorboards. There are 2 Russian scientists there, and of course, the Terminator shows up. They kidnap one of the scientists, but he only speaks Russian. They head to Murray's place so he can translate. Nancy, having spent the night at the hospital with Mrs. Driscoll, knows some freaky shit is going down. She calls the Byers house, trying to talk to Will, but he isn't there. Nancy and Jonathan head over to the Wheelers' house where they find all the littles. They all get on the same page and realize that the Mind Flayer has possessed several people in town, including Nancy and Jonathan's old boss, the head of the newspaper. After heading to his house, they confirmed that all of the possessed people are guzzling chemicals. In an attempt to find the Mind Flayer's base, they have the brilliant idea to go get Mrs. Driscoll and let her lead the way. Their plan doesn't work, because it's only the 5th episode and they can't have it all worked out by now. They are attacked at the hospital by the Flayed, which is what we're calling the possessed people. Huge fight ensues and a nasty goo monster is born. Chapter 6. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. We're gonna jump around a little bit here. Picking back up with the Dream Team, they have set off the alarm after the guard that Steve beat up alerts everyone. Robin and Steve hold the door so Dustin and Erica can escape. They get shut up with truth-telling drugs and are high as hell. The Russians beat up on Steve a little bit because apparently it's not a season of Stranger Things until somebody's beat the shit out of Steve. Lucky for Steve, Dustin and Erica created a distraction and saved both their butts. After some tomfoolery and physical violence on Hopper's part, because that's his whole personality this season, they get the scientist, whose name is Alexei, to tell them what it is the Russians are doing in Hawkins. What they're doing is reopening the gate, presumably because they think they can weaponize the creatures of the Upside Down. Alexei says he can turn off the device that's opening the gate, but it's too heavily guarded for them to get down there, which to Hop is basically a dare. They call Dr. Owens for backup and head straight to Hawkins. Jumping back in with our goo flayer over at the hospital and everybody getting they ass beat. The littles in the hospital realize the Mind Flayer is there. So Elle hops in on the fight. Nobody's seriously hurt, but the goo flayer gets away. Turns out there's an even bigger goo flayer that it absorbs into. Ew. 11 does some dream walking, trying to find any of the Flayed. She can't find a single one, but does find Billy. He's sitting alone in his room. Obviously a trap. Instead of going over there, 11 decides to hop inside Billy's head. When she does, she sees this huge dark cloud that is the Mind Flayer. It has hidden itself inside Billy's worst memories. Once Elle gets to the middle, she sees the factory where it's hiding out. Unfortunately, the Mind Flayer catches her, flips things around on her, and finds out that she's in the cabin. He gathers his army, and they all head straight for her. Chapter 7. The Bite. It's the 4th of July. In the last episode, our a-hole of a mayor gave up Hopper. He gets his, though, when the Terminator threatens him. Nice. He's throwing this huge carnival fair thing. Hop and Joyce head there because that's where the kids are supposed to be. The mayor sees them and the Terminator shows up. Using a weapon with a silencer, he murders Alexei there at the carnival. Murray tries to help him, but by the time he finds Joyce and Hop, Alexei has passed away in between 2 carnival rides. Murray, Joyce, and Hop all manage to get away. Using a walkie-talkie, they overhear the Russians saying that they have the kids trapped in the mall, and they head straight there. The Dream Team makes it out of the secret Russian base. They all hide in the movie theater while Dustin sends out an SOS. Steve and Robin eventually come down, puking up massive amounts of popcorn. They have a heart-to-heart where Steve admits his feelings for Robin, and Robin admits that she's into girls. They all attempt to get out of the mall, but every single door is being guarded. They hide, but are slowly being surrounded by guards. Over with the peeps in the cabin, a 3-story tall goo flayer is headed straight for them. They attempt to hold it off, blocking doors and windows. 11 does her best to keep it out of the cabin, but it eventually grabs hold of her, and it takes every single person there to get her free. Elle uses the last of her power to rip apart the goo flayer, giving them the chance to run away. The group breaks into a store to grab supplies and patch up Elle. While there, they hear Dustin's SOS and head for the mall. They arrive at the mall just as the armed guards surround the Dream Team. Elle dispatches them, but immediately collapses. The episode ends with her screaming in pain. Chapter 8. the Battle of Starcourt. Jumping right back in with Elle screaming in pain. Her wound is gnarly, and there is something in there moving. Jonathan attempts to cut it out, but he can't get it done. 11 has to use her powers to rip the thing out herself. Hap, Joyce, and Murray all arrive just as this goo flare baby flops onto the floor. Finally, our group is all together. So what do? Split up again. You would think after 3 seasons they would learn that they work better together. Whatever. The adults go down to the Russian base. The dream team heads to Cerebro to navigate them through the air vents. And everyone else is supposed to be headed straight to Murray's as like a safe house. Unfortunately, Nancy's car has been sabotaged by the flayed Billy, and they all have to run back into the mall. Before they can even try to fix the car, the goo flare drops down from the ceiling, forcing the group to split up. The dream team at Cerebro sees that the mall is under attack, so Robin and Steve drive back and save Nancy, Jonathan, Lucas, and Will. Although they're all relatively unharmed, the goo flare begins chasing them down the street. After commandeering some Russian uniforms, Joyce, Hop, and Murray all manage to sneak their way onto the Russian base. The Terminator is shortly behind them. While Murray is flipping some switches, Hop and Joyce plan an official date, because there's been this forced angry attraction between the two of them all season. In order to get the keys to turn off the machine that's trying to reopen the gate, Hop and Joyce need Planck's constant. The only person who knows it is Dustin's girlfriend, Susie, and she forces Dustin to sing a never-ending story before she forks it over. Please enjoy these shots of everyone's faces as they are forced to endure this. Max, Mike, and 11 all make an attempt to escape from the mall, but Billy stops them, dispatching of Mike and Max with 0 issue. This causes the goo flare that's chasing the peeps in the car to turn around and head back for the mall. So the car flips a U to head back and help everyone. Just as Billy is about to feed 11 to the goo flare, everyone from the car who somehow beat the goo flare back to the mall starts setting off fireworks directly at it, creating a distraction. About 5 things happen simultaneously, so stay with me. Max and Mike have finally woken up after getting knocked on their prepubescent little butts. Billy is hovering over 11, ready to kill her, but she uses a memory that she saw in Billy's head to connect to him. Downstairs in the Russian lab, Hop and the Terminator are having a throwdown. Hop finally gets the upper hand and chunks the Terminator into the laser machine. Billy pulls himself out of the Mind Flayer possession just as Max and Mike are arriving at the food court. And Max is forced to watch as Billy stands up to the goo flare, saving 11, but losing his own life in the process. Back in the Russian base, Joyce is forced to close the gate as Hopper is standing right next to the machine. Everyone standing next to the machine is wiped off the face of the map, and the goo flare falls to the ground as its connection to the Upside Down is cut off. Max holds Billy as he takes his final breaths, letting out a pain-filled, "I'm sorry." Joyce downstairs sees that Hop is gone, but she and Murray have to run to safety. Right then, Dustin and Erica see the US forces coming in to assist, but it's too late. Everything is over. The military goes over every room, but the Russians are gone. The night comes to a close with the mall being set on fire. The group comes back together in the parking lot, the tears in Joyce's eyes telling 11 that her father is gone. All of the deaths caused by the Mind Flayer have been covered up by the mall fire. The mayor is arrested, and life resumes. Robin and Steve get new jobs. Joyce adopts 11 and sells her house. Everyone is there helping them pack up, and everyone has to say goodbye. Nancy and Jonathan, Mike and 11, the entire D&D group all say goodbye. While folding up some of Hop's old clothes, Joyce finds the speech that he was supposed to give Mike and 11. Joyce gives it to Elle. And in that speech, Hop tells her how he feels, that he thinks they're slipping apart. He misses his time with her, and he's scared because things are changing. He accepts it, though, and tells 11 to grow up, to live, to feel and get hurt. But all that he asks of her is that she keep the door open 3 inches. This season ends with separate ways playing as Joyce closes the door on the oh so familiar Byer house. As the credits roll, we see snow. A frost-covered Russian prison comes into view. 2 Russian guards are selecting a prisoner. They skip over a cell saying, "Not the American." Instead, a Russian prisoner is dragged out of his cell, down to a cage where a Demogorgon is released to feed on him. And then the season really ends. Chapter 1. The Hellfire Club. Our season kicks off with a flashback to Hawkins' lab in 1979. We see a rainbow room full of kids wearing hospital gowns. There are at least 16 of them, and they have powers and number tattoos, just like 11. Dr. Brenner is training with one of the kids before the oh-so-familiar alarm of the Hawkins lab begins to blare. Brenner is knocked out, and when he wakes up, he finds the hall littered with bodies. All of the number kids are dead, except for 11, who is covered in blood. Please allow 7 to 8 episodes for the resolution on this one. Back to present day, 11 is living in California with the Byers. She's having trouble fitting in. Probably should have gone to therapy years ago. Neither here nor there currently. Real quick, this is supposed to be 3 years of growth. We're reaching there, duffers. Anywho, 11 has a bully, Angela. Things come to a head after Angela and her gang smash a diorama of Hop and the cabin. Elle attempts to retaliate using her powers, but they're still gone, making her look like a freak. Jonathan is turned into a pothead. He's having relationship problems because Nancy was supposed to visit for spring break. She canceled to work, and he isn't going to visit her because he's waiting on his college acceptance letter. And Will is searching for an actual arc this season. Joyce is in encyclopedia sales, so she's at home when a package from Russia arrives. It's a creepy Russian doll. She calls her least favorite Russian expert Murray, and he advises her to break the doll open. Inside, she finds a serial killer note saying that Hopper is still alive. Mike and Dustin are in a D&D club called Hellfire, run by a new character named Eddie. He's an eternal senior who's a bit intense. Tonight is the end of a semester-long D&D campaign. Mike and Dustin are in charge of finding a substitute for the club, which they find in Erica, Lucas's sister. The campaign, Vecna's Curse, goes off without a hitch. The group needed a substitute because Lucas, who's also in the club, ditched to go to the championship basketball game. He's moving apart from Mike and Dustin. He's tired of being a nerd and he wants to be popular now. And he does end up winning the championship for his team. Lucas and Max broke up, and Max is high-key depressed since losing Billy last year. She and her mom are forced to move into the local trailer park after Billy's dad left them both. Max's mom started drinking after Billy's dad left, and Max now has mandatory therapy sessions with the school counselor. She is sinking, withdrawing, failing classes, having recurring nightmares about Billy's death. Her only real coping mechanism is this kick-ass album by Kate Bush. After a super fun therapy session, Max heads to the bathroom where she finds Chrissy Cunningham, the head cheerleader, getting sick. She tells Max to get lost. Afterwards, she experiences a terrifying hallucination. After school, she and Eddie meet in the woods so she can buy drugs to escape this horrific shit. She wants something a little more serious than the weed he's carrying, so after the game, they head to Eddie's place. While at his trailer, Chrissy has another hallucination, this one worse than the others. We see this over well done, char-faced mofo. The lights begin to flicker, giving us our first real sign that this creature is from the Upside Down. In her hallucination, Charred Face lifts her up using some unknown power and begins to break all of her limbs. Then suck her eyeballs back into her brain. And Eddie gets to watch as Chrissy is cracked like a fucking glow stick.
Chrissy, wake up! I don't like this!
Chapter 2. Vecna's Curse. We open up to the final shot of Joyce and Hopper last season just before he gets neutralized or whatever we're calling this. How did he survive this insane explosion that apparently turns people to dust? Oh, he jumped behind a wall. Plot armor. Hop after not dying, finds himself captured by some very unfriendly comrades. They cart his ass all the way to that Russian prison we saw at the end of last season. There's some light bondage and torture play, but eventually he just becomes a regular old prisoner. Oh, also they shave his head. Oh my god, matching father-daughter haircuts. Mike arrives in California, and it's weird. 11 is lying about having friends and getting bullied, and Will is weirdly jealous. 11 takes Mike to a skating rink. She runs into Angela, who gets the whole rink in on a humiliation ritual, if we're being real about it. 11 responds by smashing in Angela's nose with a roller skate. And don't you worry, I'm sure her parents can afford that nose job. Murray has flown to California, so he and Joyce can brainstorm that serial killer note, because apparently they couldn't do that over the phone. Joyce believes this note to be authentic because it mentions Enzo's at 7, that date they never got to go on. The note has a number on it. They make the call and are told to bring $40,000 to Nome, Alaska in order to get Hop back. Murray and Joyce record the conversation and then overhear a woman in the background calling the man on the phone a pig, basically, putting it together that Hop is stuck in jail. Lucas went to a party after the championship at Benny's Burgers. Lucas spent the night there and is with some popular dudes as the news reveals that a Hawkins student was murdered the night before, just as police cars pull up. When Chrissy's boyfriend learns of the news that Eddie was the last one to see her alive, he immediately goes on a witch hunt for him, thinking that D&D, and therefore the Hellfire Club, is a form of devil worship because of the media. Max wakes up to find every single police car in Hawkins outside of Eddie's trailer. Oh yeah, this guy's the sheriff now because nobody was gonna trust this other guy to do the job. Eddie's uncle was the one to call the police. He came home to find Chrissy, or what was left of her, but no Eddie. Max goes to Dustin to tell him everything. That she saw Eddie and Chrissy together, and then she saw Eddie hightailing it out of there. Oh yeah, also the power flickered right before everything went down. Max and Dustin go to the video store, where Steve and Robin are working, to make some calls. After contacting some of Eddie's friends, they find out that he's probably at his dealer's house. When they get there, Eddie is struggling. He does manage to fill them in on what exactly happened to Chrissy. With this info, they now have confirmation that something from the Upside Down is in Hawkins yet again. Nancy goes to the trailer park with this kid Fred. They're investigating Chrissy's death for their school paper, but Fred, he's having hallucinations just like Chrissy did. And he has one there while he's at the trailer park. Apparently he was in a car accident that resulted in someone's death, and Charredface uses this as ammunition to glow stick his ass just like Chrissy. We also get our first look at exactly what is waiting for our group in the Upside Down this season. Chapter 3, The Monster and the Superhero. Real quick, just to get it out of the way, over in Russia, Hopper gets confirmation from his guard that Joyce is on her way, so he breaks his ankle to slip the cuffs. Get ready for this literally shattered ankle to not affect him at all the rest of the season. The episode actually opened up with a helicopter landing in Dr. Owen's front yard. We saw these military bad boys in the last episode. They were in Hawkins at the morgue. They've brought pictures of what happened to Chrissy, and they believe that 11 is responsible for these killings, and they want to know where she is. Over at the skating rink, an ambulance has arrived for Angela's nose. She's literally fine, stitch her up, stop being so dramatic. Anyway, Mike is looking at 11 a little weird, like he didn't think she was capable of doing something like this, but she killed people when she was like 12. Just saying. They are picked up by a Stone Jonathan and his new friend Argyle, driving minors around while under the influence. Those are choices. They all arrive back home to find Murray in their kitchen. He and Joyce come up with a BS story about needing to leave town for a work conference, and they hop on a plane to Alaska the next morning. Mike and 11 have a fight because he thinks that she is acting way out of character. She's upset because he can't say I love you. This all goes down just before 11 is arrested for assaulting Angela. While being transported to juvie, some dudes yoink her out of the van. It's Dr. Owens. He takes her to a cafe and tells her that Hawkins is in danger. The Upside Down is back, and he asks for her help fighting a war. Our witch hunt beat up on some of Eddie's bandmates, who tell them that Dustin knows where he is. The witch hunt heads to Dustin's house. Obviously, he's not there, but Lucas does have the chance to radio Dustin to warn them all. Lucas tells him that Eddie is hiding out in Hop's old cabin. He's not, and Lucas uses this as a chance to get the hell away from them. The new and improved Dream Team bring Eddie some snacks, and they get to be the ones to tell him that there is a town-wide manhunt for his ass. They tell him not to worry just as they hear police sirens heading towards Fred's body. They head that way and run into Nancy, who's being questioned by the police as she was the last one to see him alive. Dream Team gives Nancy the lowdown about Charred Face, now dubbed Vecna. They split up, Nancy and Robin heading to the library, because while at the trailer park, Nancy heard a story about a man named Victor Creel. His family was killed in the exact same way Chrissy was, back in the 50s. They eventually find an article saying Victor Creel claimed his house was haunted and a demon murdered his family. They believe that this demon was Vecna. Steve, Max, and Dustin head to the school. They break into the counselor's office to steal Chrissy's psych file. Not only do they find Chrissy's file, but a file on Fred, connecting our two victims. But that's not the only connection. Both Chrissy and Fred were experiencing depressions, headaches, and nosebleeds. Guess who else is experiencing all of these things? Max, meaning that Vecna plans to make her one of his victims. It is at the school that Max has her first hallucination. Chapter 4. Dear Billy. Joyce and Murray arrive in Alaska, met by an absolutely unhinged man named Yuri. He's in cahoots with our guard and will be the one to fly them to Russia to go get Hop. They hand over the money. He tells them to cop a squat because he is about to count all $40,000. At the prison, Hop makes a harrowing escape, beating the crap out of people, blowing shit up, riding a snowmobile. He makes it all the way to the safe house only to be immediately captured and taken back to prison. Hopper's Russian guard was betrayed by Yuri. That coffee he gave Joyce and Murray was laced. He called the prison and gave them up for a huge reward. In Cali, Owens has a team of people watching over the Byers house. They're told 11's fine, but you're all under house arrest. They order a pizza to use Argyle as their great escape. They think they hear his van pull up, but really, it's the US military shooting up a house full of children. Had to be American. Thank God for convenient plot lines, because Argyle arrives just as our group is carrying out a bullet-riddled, unnamed agent guy. At the school, freshly out of her Vecna hallucination, Max tells everyone about her connection to the victims and how she's on the hit list. Given the timeline of the other victims, it's likely she'll be KO'd by the next day. Lucas meets up with them at the school, and they all get on the same page. That page being, we are getting fucked from both sides. Jason's witch hunt and Vecna. The Dream Team splits up again. Robin and Nancy pretend to be grad students writing a thesis, getting the head of the nut house to let them talk to Victor Creel. They tell him they think the thing that killed his family is back. Real quick face reveal. How is this not some sort of infection? Get this man to a hospital. Victor tells Nancy and Robin about how his family was tormented by this demon who forced visions of their worst fears upon them. Sound familiar? The night his family died, Victor was stuck in one of these visions, but he heard a song playing and suddenly he was back. And oh yeah, his whole family was dead, except for his son, who was in a coma and then died a few days later. The rest of the Dream Team hides out in the Wheeler's basement as Max writes goodbye letters to everybody. She hands them out to everybody, dropping some off at her house, only to be tormented by Vecna real quick. For her last delivery, they head to the cemetery because this letter is for Billy. She says she wishes she could have saved him, she feels guilty for not doing so, and that she's sorry. Afterwards, she's transported into a Vecna vision. Billy is there, covered in his own blood, saying that Max wanted him dead, tormenting her with her own guilt. She runs from him, only to find herself in an area surrounded by the bodies of the other victims. She's confronted by Vecna, who begins to lift her up just as he did his other victims. Dustin is able to reach Robin and Nancy, who tell him to play music for Max. Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush plays as Max sees her friends. Connecting to her memories with them, she manages to escape. It is this, and only this, that keeps Vecna from killing Max then and there. How's that ever too comical, you little shits? Chapter 5. The Nina Project. Back with the pizza party, our unnamed agent guy tells them to go warn Dr. Owens. He dies in the back of a pizza van, but not before giving them a pen. They bury him in the desert and realize that that pen has a piece of paper inside of it. Written on it, a series of numbers. Not for a phone, but for a computer. 11 is brought to an underground bunker in the middle of nowhere. It's an old missile silo that's been converted into a secret base for something called the Nina Project. Also, Dr. Brenner is alive. Dun dun dun. Dr. Brenner's like, hey 11, I can help you get your powers back. And Elle's like, absolutely not. I'm out. Unfortunately, she apparently signed a contract to fight in this war in blood because they do not let her leave. They knock her out, shave her head, and shove her in a sim. Literally. They shove her into a simulation of her own memories because there's something from her past that she's forgotten. She's back in the rainbow room with all of the other number kids. Also, this guy's here, but it's Jamie Campbell Bower, so nobody's mad about it. He is pretty much the only friend and ally that 11 has there. All of the kids there are being tested by Dr. Brenner, just like 11 was in season 1. Only she's kind of the runt and not doing so great. Also, she keeps having these super chill flashbacks to blood-covered hallways that are making her seize out. Has the girl not been traumatized enough? When she wakes up, she realizes that she has enough power to escape, but only just enough. It's then she realized that this process is going to work, and she fully commits. Our comrade Yuri is flying a tied-up Joyce and Murray to the Russian prison. They manage to get free. Unfortunately, Murray knocks out Yuri, so he can't land the plane, and it crashes. Max is drawing some of the things that she saw in her Vecna vision. Nancy puts it together that Max is drawing pieces of a house that Nancy recognizes from an article about Victor Creel. So, they do the only rational thing and break into the house. There, Max sees an old grandfather clock that's been prominently featured in all of her visions. As they're searching for clues, the lights begin to flicker, meaning that Vecna is in the house in the Upside Down. They follow him up to the attic, and we're gonna pause there for just one sec. The witch hunt is scouting places looking for Eddie, including exactly where he's hiding. Eddie calls the dream team for help, but unfortunately, they left their radio downstairs as they explored the Creel house. Eddie paddles out to the middle of the lake to try and escape the witch hunt. Unfortunately, he's followed. Just as Jason is about to reach him, one of his friends is taken by Vecna there in the lake. At that exact moment, in the Creel house, the dream team has a power surge that then breaks all of their lights. Chapter 6. The Dive. At the Byers house, in the last episode, unknown agent man is taken by the military and tortured. No one is surprised. They want to know where 11 is. But my guy is not budging, so they put him in the oven coffin. Brenner pushes 11 further into her memories. There, Jamie Campbell Bower, whose name I missed, tells 11 about number 1, who according to Brenner, doesn't exist. To have full control over her powers, Jamie tells 11, find a memory that makes you angry and sad, reminding her about her mother, who tried to come get her. He also tells her to be suspicious of those around her. This turns out to be good advice almost immediately, as she's attacked by some other kids. She continues having flashes to all of the number kids being murdered, and she wakes up thinking that she is the one that did it. Pizza Party make a beeline for our favorite hacker, Susie, so she can, do computer stuff. She uses the info on that little piece of paper to find Nina's location. And the Pizza Party are back on the road. Over in the motherland, Hop and several other comrades, including his now imprisoned guard friend, are fed a dinner to fatten them up because there's a monster that needs feeding. Hop's brewing a plan though, and he steals vodka and a lighter. Joyce and Murray manage to survive the plane crash with virtually no injuries. They come up with a plan to have Murray imitate Yuri so they can get into the prison. In Hawkins, police cars arrive at the lake to find Jason holding his mangled friend. Seeing his friend die like that only confirms for him his conspiracy theory about Eddie being in league with the devil. Real quick, peep this town meeting that resulted in a mob going after Eddie, led by this white boy. Eddie, having run from his second murder scene, manages to get in contact with the dream team. They head straight for him. On the way, Dustin realizes that his compass is not pointing to true north. Just like in season 1, they realize that it's pointing towards a gate. They head towards it, and it leads them to the lake, exactly where the murder happened the night before. Steve dives down and confirms it is, in fact, a gate, which Dustin immediately dubs Watergate. As he's giving the rest of the team the lowdown, something grabs his foot and pulls him back underwater through the gate. One by one, every single teen jumps in after him, So now they're all stuck down there. Also, a bunch of freaky upside-down bats bite Steve. Can you spell rabies? To make matters worse, the cops decide to show up right then, forcing Dustin, Lucas, and Max to lead them away from the lake. Chapter 7. The Massacre at Hawkins' Lab. In Russia, it's Demogorgon dinner time. Murray and Joyce arrive at the prison just in time for the show. That show being Hop gets eaten by a Demogorgon. He and the other prisoners are given weapons. Doesn't do him much good. Hop, using his stolen vodka and lighter, sets his spear on fire, keeping the Demogorgon at bay. Joyce and Murray take the prison warden hostage, forcing their way into the control room. Joyce presses some random buttons, saving Hop and his Russian guard at the very last second. And finally, we get the Hopper-Joyce reunion we've been waiting for all season. The teens arrive in the Upside Down just in time to save Steve from being bat dinner. Said bats immediately cover up the gates, forcing the kids further into the Upside Down. They patch Steve up and head to the Wheeler house because apparently Nancy has guns. Once at the Wheeler house, they unfortunately learn that the Upside Down is stuck in time on the date that the gate opened, so no guns for them. Fortunately, the Littles are also at the Wheeler house, and they use a light bright to talk to each other. Topside, the Littles were taken to the Wheeler house by the police and are now being interviewed with their parents. In between interviews, Dustin puts it together that Vecna is killing kids to open gates. When they get in contact with the teens, they tell them every kill site is a gate. On both sides, they head for the trailer park, the closest gate. As the teens arrive to the trailer park, Vecna is alerted by this bat thing of their location. As they arrive at the trailer, the Littles have just opened the gate from the other side. They begin to go through the gate one by one, except for Nancy. Before she has a chance to go through the gate, Vecna has her. She is in the Upside Down, in Steve's pool, and Barb is there. As she climbs out of the pool, she finds herself in Vecna's mind, just like Max was. And there, Vecna begins to tell Nancy a story. We have to pause there for just 1 second. At Project Nina, 11 is still struggling. Brenner decides to throw her in the deep end because they are running out of time. The number kids that threw around 11 like she was a basketball get punished, and it's brutal. This man is supposed to have a redemption arc this season. 11 is medically cleared and immediately put back into Gen Pop. Target numero uno. This dude, whose name is apparently Peter, I don't know when we learned that, he tells 11, the other number kids are going to kill you, and Dr. Brenner is going to let it happen. Here's this key card so you can escape. And everything goes off without a hitch, except 11's the only one that's going to fit in the tunnel. Peter cons 11 into taking out this device that he claims is just tracking his location. Just as she does this, guards run in. They are surrounded. The guards are closing in. Just as they're about to get captured, Peter uses powers just like 11's to take out all the guards. He reveals that he is number one and tells 11 to sit tight. He's gonna make sure it's safe. 11, being 11, doesn't listen. When she hears screaming, she goes out to investigate. She walks through the hall, finding the numbered kids' broken bodies littered everywhere. Walking into the rainbow room, she sees Peter finishing off the last kid. And then Peter begins to tell 11 a story. He tells her that when he was a boy, he rejected the structure of society. Once he realized he had powers, he knew he could do whatever he wanted. Take over the world if he so pleased. And that was exactly his plan. He was the one who killed his family. When he was a boy, he realized that with each kill, he grew stronger, moving from bunnies to his own family. He thinks himself a superior being above humans, as is 11. And he asks her to join him in his quest to take over the world, to which 11 promptly declines. They have a standoff and he is kicking her little, 6-year-old butt. He lifts her up off the ground. Her limbs begin to twist, about to break. She is going to die. Until the thought of her mom allows her to overpower Peter, pushing his body through a portal in time and space. As he falls, we see him get electrocuted, becoming a charred version of his former self. As Peter is Telling his story to 11, Nancy, stuck in the Vecnavision, follows a young Henry Creel as he torments and finally murders his own family. Afterwards, his death was faked by Dr. Brenner. Henry Creel is Peter. Peter is one, and one is Vecna. Chapter 8. Papa. Our Russian comrades are screwed because earlier Joyce was smashing buttons and now the Demogorgon is loose. Oh, also the Russians are doing this, and I think this is supposed to be a piece of the Mind Flayer. Anywho, they all break out of prison and entrust Yuri with hatching their escape. They've done better as far as plans go. As the pizza party drives to Nina's location, it is heavily implied that Will is in love with Mike. Ow! You fuck? Which one of you did this? Why are you hurting the children? At Nina, 11 is now turbocharged since she remembered the most traumatic thing that's ever happened in her life that she desperately tried to repress. The Duffers just won't give this girl one moment of peace. Brenner and Owens show 11 that one is in Hawkins killing people. Brenner says that one is attempting to push the Upside Down into the real world using Hawkins as a doormat. 11 has just enough time to see how truly screwed all of her friends are before the government busts down their door. Because in the last episode, our extra crispy unnamed agent man was fresh out of the oven. His cook time loosened his tongue, and he told them where 11 was. There is a huge showdown. 11 takes down a helicopter, and we see her say goodbye to Papa. It's meant to be a painful last redemption, but 10 minutes ago, he was drugging her and put her in a shock collar. So,
I've only ever wanted to help you.
You are a liar. Despite all the odds, the pizza party makes it to Nina just as 11 needs rescuing. 11 has some lovely reunions, but they GTFO because, 11's probably actively at war with the US government. Nancy, while stuck in Vecna's curse, is shown the destruction he plans to rain upon Hawkins. And then he says, "Tell 11 I said, boo, bitch." Vecna lets Nancy wake up so that she can tell the rest of the group how fucked they really are. Because once he kills Max, all of this will begin to go down. Their plan, as Vecna is killing Max, they will sneak into the Upside Down Creel house and kill him before he finishes off Max. There's absolutely no way that plan will go wrong. They gather weapons, great idea, except the witch hunt happens to see Nancy, Mike's sister, Mike, who's in Hellfire with Eddie, so they are on high alert. Armed with a range of homemade weapons, they head to the Creel house to hatch their plan. Chapter 9. The piggyback. Over with our comrades, Hop and Joyce have a heart-to-heart, and then they do it. I'm pretty sure. It's heavily implied. They get in contact with Owen's people who tell them their kids are in big trouble, so they hatch a plan to break back into jail. They're gonna kill some upside-down monsters as a distraction for the kids while Yuri fixes their ride home. Half of the dream team hops into the Upside Down. The Downsiders, Nancy, Steve, and Robin, head to their Creel house. The Topsiders, Max, Erica, and Lucas, already at their Creel house, confirm that Vecna is inside. Erica heads across the street to be the communication between the Top and the Downsiders. Once the Downsiders arrive at their Creel house, they move on to the next phase of their plan, the bait stage. The Topsiders head into the attic, where Max lures out Vecna by admitting her deepest, darkest secrets. That at times she had wished Billy was gone. That she feels responsible for Billy's death. And, deepest and darkest of all, sometimes she wishes she was gone too. And just like that, she is under Vecna's curse. Eddie and Dustin, who stayed at the trailer park, put on a little concert, luring all of the bats to them so that the Downsiders can sneak into the Creel house. As they run inside, Erica is spotted by the witch hunt, who were tipped off by a local hick. Jason walks into the attic as Max is under the curse, holding up a gun to Lucas and demanding that he wake up Max. At the same time, the Downsiders are taken hostage before they can reach the attic. The pizza party, having no way to get back to Hawkins in time, creates an isolation tank out of a pizza freezer and these kick-ass glasses. 11 plans to piggyback off of Max's mind while Vecna is in there so that she can then enter Vecna's mind. 11 arrives just as Max is beginning to draw out Vecna. She hops into Max's mind but is lost in memories because Max is lost in memories. Vecna attempting to push her towards her darkest ones, but she forces her way into a memory of the snowball dance from season 2. It's there that 11 finds her. Just in time too, because Vecna is ruining her pretty memory with these blood balloons. Rude. Oh yeah, and he's killing her. 11 flings Vecna off of Max, and they are face to face yet again. For a moment it looks like they're evenly matched, but soon it becomes clear that although 11 could take out 1, she's no match for what Vecna has become. Vecna strings up 11 and Max in his mind. 11, attempting to reach his humanity, tells him that Dr. Brenner is dead, and he does not have to be the monster that Brenner was. But one has always wanted to rule over people, and it was 11 who sent him to a place where he could become exactly what he needed to be to do just that. It was there that he found a way to connect himself to the monsters in this new dimension. And it has been his hive mind that has been attacking the group for years. And then, after story time, he forces 11 to watch as he begins to take Max. Topside at the Creel house, Lucas does the only thing he can and charges at Jason even though he has a gun. They fight, but Jason ends up with his hands around Lucas's neck as Vecna begins to lift Max into the air. Mike screams for 11 to keep fighting as Lucas shoves Jason off of him to go to Max, but it's too late. Max's eyes go white, then both of her arms and legs snap. Our comrades have lured all of the monsters in the Russian prison to the fighting pits, where they begin to light them up, causing enough damage that Vecna releases his hold on Max and the Downsiders. And for good measure, Hop decapitates this Demogorgon. 11 in his mind, and the Downsiders in the Upside Down, face down Vecna. He falls from his spider web in flames, pelted with Molotov cocktails and buckshots. He lands in a burning pile outside the house, but disappears before the group can get to him. Over at the trailer park, Eddie, who sacrificed himself to lure the bats away from Dustin and the gate, slowly dies in his arms. At the Creel house, a sobbing Lucas holds Max as she says she doesn't want to die before slipping away as 11 also watches on. When she's gone, the fourth and final gate opens. The earth itself splits open as the 4 gates reach out towards each other, destroying the town of Hawkins. 11, still with Lucas and Max, uses her power to reach into Max's body, connecting to her love for her, and restarts her heart. 2 days later, the pizza party arrives in Hawkins as the townspeople flee. They reunite with most of the dream team at the Wheeler house, meeting up with the rest of them at the hospital with Max. She's in a coma, and the doctors say she might not wake up. While helping out with disaster relief, Dustin is forced to be the one to tell Eddie's uncle that he's dead. The entire world thinks that he killed Chrissy, and they will never be able to know the truth. This was such a rough season. I think the only good thing that happened was that Robin might get a girlfriend. I'm being so serious because Jonathan and Nancy are being awkward. Will has this unexplained connection to Vecna, and he knows that he's still alive. And finally, 11, while searching in Max's mind, finds nothing. Her screams echoing through the emptiness. The only thing the Duffer Brothers gave us is ending the season with a Hop 11 reunion, just like I said. Matching father-daughter haircuts. There are hugs all around, but there's also darkness. You are not allowed to forget about the darkness. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, go ahead and press some buttons down below if you're into that kind of thing. If not, I'll see you in the next one.